Yep. Okay, let's call the June 22nd, 2021 Planning Commission to order. Would everybody like to rise and say a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any changes to the agenda?
No, Vice Chairman.
Okay. Can we get roll call?
Vice Chairman Jacobs,
Here.
Commissioner Helmar,
Here.
Commissioner Garza,
Here.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Here.
Okay, under public comments, under Government Code 54954.3, members of the audience may address the Planning Commission on any items of interest to the public or on any agenda item before or during the Commissioner's decision of the item. State law prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on non-agenda items. Do we have any comments?
I have received no written comments, Vice Chairman.
Okay, moving on. Tonight we're looking at Planning Commission adoption of resolution number 021P-008 with conditions approving application number CUP 21-06 for a commercial cannabis indoor cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution micro business facility to be located on 1950 Mercantile Lane. Discussion or potential action items.
All right, thank you, Vice Chairman, Commissioners. Tonight, staff is recommending adoption of Resolution 021P-008 with conditions for the development of a microbusiness cannabis facility that supports indoor cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing on 1950 Mercantile Lane out at the industrial park. On May 13th, 2021, the Community Development Department received and accepted an application for the development of a commercial cannabis cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing facility at 1950 Mercantile Lane. These permits require both because it is a new construction build for cannabis facility, it requires the issuance and approval of a conditional use permit application, as well as a site plan review application, in addition to analyzing and certifying the environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. In terms of department comments, once the application was deemed complete, staff requested comments from the necessary city departments, and this proposal, including the conditions of approval, reflect feedback from the necessary city departments. In terms of the development proposal, the proposed project consists of the rehabilitation of one existing building and the construction of two new buildings to support a cannabis microbusiness that will engage in indoor cultivation, distribution, manufacturing using non-volatile solvents of cannabis and cannabis products. Building one, which is the existing building, and being a small town, we always kind of like identify what the old buildings are. And this is the old Gazelle building in the industrial park next door to the existing Next Greenwave facility on Mercantile. So total building square footage of that building is 3,220 square feet, with about 470 square foot of manufacturing space, 470 square foot of distribution space, and about 2,280 square foot of office space. Building 2, which is a new cultivation facility, 27,000 square feet of total building square footage, with about 18,488 square foot of cultivation space, and then office space of about 8,512. Building 3, which is a future plan, that total building square footage is 7,380 square feet, and that will be under a future administrative site plan. So the building footprint has been established on the overall master site plan for the conditional use permit to authorize the use. We'll authorize an administrative site plan just to verify the particular elevations and some of the other components of the site plan. But the major component is really the footprint to ensure square footage, to make sure they have enough parking. So all the parking is already incorporated into the overall plan. So we felt that it'd be necessary to just have the commission authorize an admin site plan for the additional construction of the building, but the footprint's been established for the overall site plan. In terms of general plan and zoning consistency, the general plan designation is MB, which is manufacturing and business, with a zoning designation of manufacturing and business light. So the proposed project is consistent with the development regulations for commercial cannabis developments, in addition to the issuance of a city cannabis regulatory permit and state of California permit. In terms of the surrounding land use, you have to the south and west, you have industrial zone property, and to the east and north, we just have existing agricultural land. So in terms of the site plan review really helps guide staff as well as the commission and the building official in terms of the development of the project. There are 4 findings of approval that we need to look for in terms of issuance of a site plan review approval. And that's basically that the proposed project is in substantial conformance with general plan, zoning ordinance, and applicable plans adopted by the city, that they conform to the requirements of the existing zone district, and then basically that it's consistent and conforms to the applicable design standards and guidelines as adopted by the city council, and that it won't have a significant adverse effect on the public health, safety, and welfare. So in terms of looking at the project, in terms of utilities, this property has all utilities are readily available for connection on Mercantile. All utility connections shall be shown on the final site plan and approved by the planning department and confirmed by the public works department. In terms of storm runoff, on-site stormwater drainage runoff will run into the existing storm drain facilities on Mercantile. In terms of gas, water, and sewer, all these facilities are available on Mercantile Lane for easily connection. This is a kind of a finished subdivision with finished lots, so all the utilities have been stubbed out, easily, readily accessible for all of these projects. And then in terms of meters, you'll have a separate meter for natural gas and water, and then we'll also have the landscape meter separate for the water as well. In terms of parking, the standard for commercial cannabis facilities are it's 1 space per 1,000 square foot of building space. So the total square footage of all structures is 37,600, requiring 38 stalls. And they have currently provided 48 parking stalls for this facility. And so there's going to be ample parking available for this particular project. And then lighting has been provided as required in the plan and zoning code as well. In terms of the refuge containers, the proposed development provides for the required refuge containers, and their size, shape, and location are consistent with that of the city requirements. In terms of landscaping, the proposed landscaping exceeds the city minimum requirement for landscaped areas as it relates to frontage, parking, highway setbacks, and equipment screening. A separate landscape plan will be submitted to the Community Development Department for review and approval prior to or at the time the building plans are submitted. In terms of fencing, all interior fencing will have to be of material allowed under the Planning and Zoning Code. All fencing adjacent to public rights-of-way will be a combination of wrought iron and landscape or decorative block material. The heights of the fencing shall not exceed 6 feet. In terms of lighting has been reviewed and approved by the police department to ensure that there'll be no spillover lighting. In addition, the site will at least meet or exceed the 1.5 foot candle standard of light within the site to ensure adequate lighting for security cameras and just overall safety. In terms of offsite improvements, pretty simple on the offsite improvements, just basically furnish, install offsite sidewalk, driveway approaches, and street lighting on Mercantile frontage as approved by the city engineer. So those are some improvements that will be required. In terms of the conditional use permit analysis, we look at a little bit more in depth in terms of the operational criteria, such as security, odor control, hours of operation, pretty higher level look. Typically the regulatory permit side, the chief of police will look in more detail in terms of the operations, access control, security of those nature. So the purpose of them is to operate an adult use and medicinal micro business. So typically a micro business is 3 activities: indoor cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution. The indoor cultivation is limited to 10,000 square feet of canopy space. Manufacturing is limited to non-volatile use of solvents, and then you can have distribution. It allows them to work all together on the same premise under the one entity rather than having to have separate entities for all the different premises. They can obtain 1 license, but in this case 2 licenses, because you have to get a medical and an adult use license separately. So, and we kind of identify what cultivation is. I think we've probably talked about this several times, what cultivation is, what distribution is, and what manufacturing is in terms of as it relates to cannabis. The location is at 1950 Mercantile Lane. In terms of security, The applicant's site protection strategy will address all forms of security concerns and will be required to meet all the security requirements as it relates to the Planning and Zoning Code strictly for commercial cannabis activities. In terms of building access, all employees and authorized personnel will enter the building at designated entry area after checking with security personnel at the site entrances who will grant authorization into the facility. They'll have on-site security during business hours as required, and that was as modified by the council quite a while ago regarding requiring on-site security during business hours, but after, you still have cameras, you still have a lot of the other precautions in place. And it's just very cost prohibitive to have 24-hour security all the time. In terms of estimated employees, is 3 to 5. I'm not sure if that'll change as they grow, but as of right now, that's what they've identified. We talked about the 48 parking stalls on the site plan. In terms of water use, they're expecting to approximately use about 3.5 acre foot of water for the cultivation operation. This is not expected to affect the city's ability to provide treated water in the community. We are conveying to everyone about the drought and ensuring that, they are being conscious, because commercial, industrial are also under this order to try and reduce their water consumption. So as we go deeper into the drought, there'll be a lot of discussion about ensuring that all customer classes are showing some type of conservation effort when it comes to these operations. In terms of wastewater disposal, the applicant will not introduce any toxic chemical waste or solvents into the local waste stream, and will be required to disclose all products, chemicals, solvents, active ingredients that will be used as part of that extraction process, as well as the cultivation process. The solid waste, they will just contract with Mid-Valley Disposal. The majority of the trim, any other waste products that come from even the manufacturing process typically falls under green waste. So they can put it in a green waste container just like we do our lawn clippings at our house. In terms of distance from sensitive receptors, as you know, the commercial standards is 930 feet measured from an existing school or proposed school site. This project is significantly, pretty far away from those locations. As we know, anywhere in the industrial park are good locations for this type of activity. On June 10th, public hearing notices were sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the site. We did not receive any comments or any written comments or any phone calls regarding this project. I think we're in the second iteration of a lot of these these projects since 2016 when we started. So people just assume that that's what's going to basically be developing out there. In terms of environmental review, this falls under a CEQA exemption 15332, which is for infill projects under 5 acres. It's in the city limits. It's applicable, all the project is consistent with the general plan and applicable general plan policies. The project site has no value as habitat or endangered, rare, threatened species. It won't result in significant traffic, noise, or water quality issues, and the site's adequately served by all required utilities and public services. So in terms of reasons for recommendation, we have the findings for the site plan approval that we talked about, and then we also have the conditional use permit findings that staff feels can be met, which is general plan consistency, the neighborhood compatibility, and asset to the neighborhood. So with that, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, that is my report. And again, this is a public hearing, so if we can open the public hearing, and then I'd be happy to take any questions that you guys might have.
Public hearing, do we have anybody on board?
Oh, all right, get me sure your mic's on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to open this up to public hearing. Is there any comments?
We are actually only doing written comments, nothing via Zoom anymore. So if no one's present in the chambers, then
Is there any written
we would have
comments?
no comments. No, I have not received any.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to. You guys have any comments?
There's nothing in this, Sean, that is not in everything else we've seen, right?
No, nothing really unique. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
That's what I was-
Yeah, and the applicant is utilizing a similar attorney that's written a lot of these applications for us, so it's very consistent.
The one thing I think I noticed, and maybe was on odor control, It didn't seem to be as intensive as some of the other explanations we've gotten before. Is that just because it's pretty much standard now?
Yeah, and we have conversations with the applicants about odor control. I just actually had a pre-application meeting today about another development in the industrial park, and we really hit it home, especially out in that location about odor control. We have standards in our code, but we're not the engineers. We're not the folks that are going to say, oh, well, I don't know if you have enough, carbon filters or you have this. The only issue we've run into in the past is just it's a maintenance issue because those carbon filters get filled up and you have to replace them quite significant, especially during the heavy flowering time when you get really strong odors. But there's other ways to do it. You can do UV, you can do other types of filtration systems. So we kind of leave it up to the applicants to understand, hey, let's not make this a code enforcement issue down the road, but you at least have to show some type of filtration system that's going to work. And we really kind of put the onus on them to develop those plans because there's not one tried and true method that just absolutely works. And a lot of times these methods are changing too. So we want to make sure it works for their project.
That's all I have.
Sarah, you have any comments?
I have a comment about the landscaping that hasn't been submitted yet. I know that our codes and stuff have things that encourage plants and landscaping for our current water conditions, but I just want to make the comment that I'd really like to see whatever they go with be heavy on the drought sensitivity side, I guess would be the right wording.
Yeah, and the landscaping is really controlled by what they call the model efficient landscape ordinance that was adopted by the state back in 2016. So the city adopted that by reference, which really established, so landscape architects have to develop the plan. It gives them a water budget based on the size of the property. So it's very drought intensive and it recognizes drought conditions all the time. Hence some of the new neighborhoods, if you've driven around somewhere the newer houses have been built, I can't tell you they're the most attractive landscaping scenarios, but that is a direct result of following the model landscape ordinance with reducing turf, using, bark or some type of ground cover that kind of keeps the moisture in to keep the ground moist, using drought tolerant type plant material, and especially when you're given a certain budget, a water budget, they say, it almost like triggers low drought tolerant, plant material and trees because they can only use so much. And so there's calculations they do, and we typically will have our landscape architects review those plans as well.
Okay, because I know on the cultivation side that they recycle it. They use a minimal amount in cultivation, and I would be willing to guess that the landscaping may even rival what they're using for cultivation. That's my only concern.
I mean, they use quite a bit of water. They use quite a bit of water for the cultivation activities. I know that typically because the cost of water is pretty substantial, that recycling the water, pulling the water down from your condensers, using as much of the recycled water or reclaimed water, and using it back in your system, or even putting it in your landscaping. I think that Next Greenway even uses some of their reclaimed water on their landscaping as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
A couple questions.
Sure.
Too. Sean, the 3.5 acre feet of water they're going to use, is that for all three phases, or is that just for the?
That's expected for the cultivation side. The manufacturing doesn't use much at all, really.
Okay.
That's going to be for the project total. Yeah.
When it gets completely built out.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not promising more. Just, I run some numbers, an acre foot of water, just so you guys, it's about 325,000 gallons from what I understand. We have like 4,000 households in Kalinga. It equates to about 265 gallons per household that we're going to give up to this. We talked last time we were here about maybe reducing the household usage to some ridiculous number of 100 gallons or something. It does have a significant impact on the homes here. I know we chip away at this a little bit each time and we keep adding, but from the numbers I'm coming up with here, we're literally taking about 265 gallons out of each household over the year in water on a yearly basis if they're using 3.5 acres of water.
Which, I mean, it is, but it's not much when the average customer uses about 15,000, or the average customer uses, we were just talking about this today. Average customer uses about, I think just for indoors, about 7,500 acre foot a month. All right, 7,500 gallons a month of water. And about, I'm not sure what the total is per year, but we have customers that use upwards of 50,000 gallons a month of water. So 200 gallons a year is not that much.
Of the
And
percentage, right? But if we get into this draconian water thing right now, where we're supposed to reduce it to a quarter of our normal usage.
well, and that's what they're recommending. We're not being hit with, our recommendation is back to 14, 15 numbers. So we're not, because the number that they gave us is actually below public health and safety standard, which is the 55 gallons per person per day. Their number that they gave us was significantly lower than that. The 55 gallons per person per day was still too low for us based on historical usage. And so we have requested a number for allocation, which is close to what the 14, 15 number was, where we were able to attain back in that drought. We have added some other additional homes and some other industry, but based on that number, we feel that without going drastic to like no outdoor watering, these are attainable. And with these projects, we have to look at the long term, at the projects, but ultimately everyone's going to have to contribute to the savings in the water, right? So the largest water users are going to have 30% could be a lot, but that's how they have to adjust. Some of these businesses will have to look at that and say, well, maybe we need to add additional reclaimed water so we can reduce that usage. But the outside watering of residential customers is the biggest percentage. So even though it takes the burden falls on a lot of times the residents, it seems like it's just that's the big pie of the water consumption for the city. We have large customers. We have the state hospital, the prison, and unfortunately, they're not going to be able to save any more than they already have because they pretty much reduced most of their outdoor watering, and they're still operating just slightly over 14, 15 numbers as it was. So it's kind of unfortunate we don't have control over, how much they use, and they've got a lot of residents at both facilities. So we've been really looking at the numbers, but we don't see that it's a substantial burden on the city to put it 3.5 acre foot a year compared to our typical allocation, which is 10,000 acre feet. And in a year like this, it's a little nerve wracking because we're approving projects. These projects are out a little bit, so they're not going to start like tomorrow when we're in this major drought. But these droughts are going to be ebb and flow, and these businesses are going to have to adjust to these drought conditions. Commercial is not just because they're in the city limits, they're not always guaranteed all their water all the time. If we say, hey, we got to cut, the goal is to see them cut too. So they're going to have to build that into their processes that they're going to have to reduce. We have this, these are always things we're going to have challenges with, but overall we have the allocation to be able to support these types of industries right now. Yeah.
I mean, I just want to go ahead.
Can I ask a question? How many gallons was it that you said could be divided to the households?
A cubic acre, from what I understand, is about 325,000 gallons. You multiply that by 3.5, you get about 1,141,000. You have 4,200 homes in Kalinga, or households. You divide that into that number, I'm coming up about 260 gallons or so. These are rough numbers if my math is correct.
Yeah.
Per year.
I was curious what that would mean, like say equating it to a shower. And I just quickly researched that they say a shower head's about 2.5 gallons in a minute. And so running your shower for 90 minutes would be 225 gallons. Because I couldn't remember what your exact numbers were.
Yeah, no, it is. It's about 265 gallons. So we were looking at a shower. We're not there yet. I think it just needs to be
Yeah.
spoken to a little bit. We canceled the water park for the kids because we don't have enough water. And I was wondering if we're going to be able to offer building permits to builders if we get into this situation. We're going to deny them, or how does the future of
There's no movement to start a moratorium on building and to start all of that. I think the city is looking to move forward. We've typically not issued building permits in such substantial numbers where you'd see such a drastic impact on the water usage. The landscaping is primarily the majority of the water that your household uses. A typical household, we've looked at a mean of like 7,500 gallons a month, but that number is probably high for an average. It's probably a little bit lower. Larry probably knows it off the top of his head, but it's probably lower on like the fives in terms of like just 5 to 7, somewhere around there in terms of the monthly indoor use, and the majority of it's all outdoors.
But
I-
if I understood you correctly, it's 55, the
Public health and safety.
public health and safety is 55 gallons per person per
Per day.
day. There's no baseline to which that's added. So if one person lives alone, the expectation is that whole house would use 55 gallons per day.
For public health and
For
safety. so,
public health
yeah.
and safety, but if 10 people lived there, they could get, 550 gallons. But I mean, there's certain operations that no matter how many people live in a place, a certain amount of water
And that's the
needs to
state
happen.
and that's the
Yeah.
state standard, and it's very hard to quantify because it's hard to verify how many people are in a household, but that's
Right.
kind of the average. We look at, I think it's an average of like 3.5 in a and like for the number of in the households, the average. But you're looking at the total 55 gallons per person per day. I think we're closer in the city over 60. What was it, Larry?
The wintertime average was 60, I believe.
60. So that's a wintertime average, which gives you a better indication on pretty much your sprinklers are off in the middle of winter. So that gives you a better indication of what the indoor usage is. So about 60. So we're a little bit over that in terms of those numbers.
Another frame of reference would be in 2015, we averaged about 85 in the summertime.
So it gives you kind of a baseline.
Yeah, I'm glad we're at least, talking about it. I know there's a lot of people and have a lot of questions, and especially if we start pulling back on water, which I think is going to happen, and we're proving this. It needs to be spoken to, and I'm glad we're doing that here, so people think we're, at least we're doing our job.
Now, we've seen a lot of these projects, over the course of my time being here. How do we have much more immediately identifiable areas for similar businesses that we should be looking at in the future that, is there like space for like 3 more of these or 20 more of these, or, just
There's space
just to
for
kind of-
quite a few. They've expanded a little bit into that area between Pacific Street
Yeah.
and Lucille. There's still a lot of property down on West Elm, down at the end on the south side of town. Plus, there's some land available. There's projects approved, but whether or not they follow through with those projects, once we get the projects approved, it's up to them to kind of pull the trigger and move forward on it. So, there's a big push. We've seen a lot of push for cultivation, and even behind the scenes, staff looks at that and starts seeing that trend where that conversation, it is a policy decision by the council to say how they want to handle that. Do we want to up the regulations to ensure that they're recycling their water, those types of things? So those are kinds of things that, the council, as we see a trend going that direction, I think it's heightened because we're in a drought.
Right.
We're looking at it, but I think the council looks at it as a balance from the economic development standpoint, the jobs, the taxes, and the water, right? So I think there's a big balance that they have to consider when they're looking at these too.
Okay.
Sean?
Yeah.
Do we know what this business is projected to bring in revenue and taxes?
I have not done the calculation, but It's going to be about, I could try to crunch the numbers. Maybe it's kind of difficult because cultivation's $7 per square foot, so that's a 10,000 canopy. So that's $70,000 in taxes and cultivation, and then for the then $25 a square foot at 470 and 470. I mean, yeah, we could probably. It's pretty easy to calculate. 470 times 25. Oops. It's about 81,000, almost $82,000.
Okay, thank you.
That's not including the future building either. So that's just the proposed. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Did I calculate that right? Yeah, I did. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, let's close this. I'd like to have roll call, please.
Oh, well, you need a motion first.
I'll motion to approve.
Would you motion it for me?
I'll motion to approve.
I thought you might.
And I'll second.
Oh, call the
Okay.
question.
Commissioner
All right, roll call,
Bryan?
please.
Oh,
All right.
Aye.
We're getting used to this.
Commissioner Helmar?
Aye.
Commissioner Garza?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Jacob?
Aye. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion and or potential action items for site plan review application SPR 21-01 Valley Garlic Cold Storage Expansion.
all right. Thank you, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, staff is recommending approval of a resolution 021P-009 with conditions for the construction of a cold storage addition, equipment room, and some new outdoor canopies at the Valley Garlic LLC processing facility at 500 Enterprise Parkway, just down the road from our previous project. So on May 20th, we received an application for site plan review for the construction of a 30,856 square foot addition to the existing cold storage building at the existing garlic processing plant, including a small equipment room and a 270 square foot of outdoor canopies. In accordance with the Clean Compliant and Zoning Code, a site plan review is required for all commercial, industrial, institution, and residential developments. So once the application was deemed complete, staff requested comments from the necessary city departments, and the proposal incorporated feedbacks from all those city departments. In terms of land use compliance, the general plan designation for the parcel is MB, manufacturing and business, with the zoning designation of manufacturing business high. The project use as a processing facility is a permitted use and consistent with all the development regulations for industrial development. So to the south, we have the industrial zone vacant land. To the west, we have residential. To the east, we have existing agriculture. And to the north, we have existing industrial as well. And in terms of site plan review, whenever new buildings are proposed, basically the issuance of a site plan review is required. There's no discretionary review. This is basically a design review when it comes to the addition of this proposed building. When it comes to the findings of approval for site plan review, is just to ensure that the construction and alterations are in substantial conformance with the general plan, zoning ordinance, and any applicable plans, that they comply or conform to the requirements of the applicable zone districts, that they conform to all applicable design standards and guidelines, and they will not have significant adverse effects on the public health, safety, and welfare. So as described in detail below, staff has determined that the proposed project is in substantial conformance with the general plan, zoning ordinance, and any applicable plans adopted by the city. The structure is expected to be 30,832 square feet, metal building, and will be constructed in accordance with California building standards, including the equipment room and the canopies. Access to this proposed addition will be via the existing entrance at 500 Enterprise Parkway. All utilities are currently connected. This is in addition to an existing building. Parking is currently provided for this facility, and existing facilities can accommodate this expansion. Since there's no anticipated demand for parking as a result of the expansion, there are currently 133 parking spaces provided and 11 loading spaces, which are sufficient to provide adequate parking for the entire facility. In terms of refuse containers, there are currently existing refuse containers. There's no impact to existing or demand for additional refuse containers. Similar to lighting, landscaping, signage. And in terms of environmental considerations, we determined that the project supports a planning commission finding that it qualifies for categorical exemption from CEQA, as this expansion would not have any detrimental effects on the public health, safety, and welfare, and fall under the general rule exception. And in terms of staff's recommendation of approval for the zoning and for the site plan, is that all applicable provisions of the code are complied with, that the project is so arranged that traffic congestion is avoided and pedestrian and vehicular traffic and welfare are protected, and there will be no adverse effect on surrounding properties. Facilities improvements related to vehicular ingress and egress, internal circulation, and all signs related to development shall be reviewed and approved at a later date. So with that, that was a brief presentation, but this is not a public hearing. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. But this is just a site plan review application for discussion and approval.
Okay, any questions, commissioners?
I have none. Pretty straightforward.
Sarah, you have any questions? Comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. Nor do I. I think it's straightforward and looks good. Don't need much discussion.
All right. So you just need to call for a vote for the resolution. We do have to adopt just for the resolution. So just
Motion for the resolution approval?
I motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Can we get a vote?
Commissioner Helmer,
Aye.
Commissioner Garza,
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Jacobs.
Aye. Okay, looks like the ayes have it. Moving along, do we have any staff announcements?
no vice chair at this time.
How about any commissioner announcements?
None.
Chairman announcements? Any questions? Okay, well, I'd like to call this meeting to an end. Thank you all.
Thank you.